Hello, friend.
Hello.
Welcome to a Mount Rushmore of Everything SNUBS video. Today we are talking about the snubs, those we left off the list, why we left them off the list of the Mount Rushmore of dog breeds. If you haven't watched that video, please go watch that first. It will be a link up in the top right corner.
Go watch it now.
First, we have to address the obvious snub that I left off. Of all the snubs between the two of us, this is probably the one that would seem most egregious to people watching. Mm-hmm. So we'll address that one first. And that's the Golden Retriever.
Golden Retriever.
So here's the thing. I think that the reason you think Golden Retriever is extreme recency bias. Because if we were talking about the Mount Rushmore of dog breeds in the last 10 years, in the last 20 years, even in the last 30 years, the vast majority of people watching this video are going to be people who, for most of their life at least, and most of their most recent life, are going to remember the Golden Retriever clearly in that spot because, as I mentioned in the regular video, they have been top 5 every decade since the 1980s, which is a 4-decade streak. But they were not even in the top 10 before the 80s. Ever. Never in the top 10.
Really?
So other breeds that reached number 1 in a decade. So Golden Retriever never did. But let's talk about some breeds that did reach number 1. The Lab, as I mentioned, 3 times. The only one to do it 3 times. Boston Terrier, twice. Cocker Spaniel, twice. Poodle, twice. Collie, once. German Shepherd once, and Beagle once. And of course, the German Shepherd and Beagle also had overwhelming stats in other categories. Golden Retriever did have the very famous Air Bud. But Golden Retriever to me is an overwhelmingly recent thing.
And you don't like that.
And as it is, we also have recent extremely represented by the Lab. Because the Lab is also extremely recent, but it's more dominant recently. So dominant that it's never allowed that Golden Retriever to reach the number 1 spot. And then another little tweak in there that I want to throw out there is Golden Retrievers and Labs, to me, are extremely similar in a lot of ways. Their coloration tends to be very similar. I think a lot of people have them linked in their mind. If you say Lab or Golden Retriever, I think some people have to think which one's which, if you're not a dog person, especially. So I almost feel like it rides on the coattails of the Lab a little bit. No disrespect for them. Beautiful, amazing dogs. This is not a personal attack on them. This is just a, like, as far as Mount Rushmore, it feels like double dipping in the Lab, but is clearly lesser than the Lab as far as popularity goes.
I understand that.
So I did leave it off the list, but it was very difficult for me to do so. The thing that I would need to do to get on the list for me is it needs to be number 1 at least once. Also, something that it could do retroactively. That's obviously actually impossible, but if it was in the top 10 any decade before the 80s. Like, part of what helped the German Shepherd is it was actually number 1 in 1920, and then it's been dominant basically since the 50s after that. The Golden Retriever is non-existent basically before the 80s, and that's a huge hit against it. That was very hard for me to overcome that. So it need to have some at least top 10 a couple times before the 80s.
Okay.
To put it in there.
All right. Fair enough. So in my case, there are a lot of dogs that could have made it. I think I was pretty solid on my 4.
Do you have no real snub that you feel like, I mean, oh man, I left this off?
For example, I thought the
Poodle.
The Poodle. Well,
address the Poodles. Just because I had it, you did.
Okay, yeah. Consistency would be 1. Like a Beagle, it's consistent.
Sure.
You know, it's everybody would agree. The Poodle, I think it has come and gone.
Well, statistically, it hasn't, as far as top 10. But I think in people's minds, it
feels like that.
Sure.
That it's more like a trending dog, where the Beagle is a very consistent, strong presence.
But
dog.
now you're comparing it to the cream of the crop, though.
We're talking Mount Rushmore.
But I'm saying, like, Beagle's, like, non-negotiable Mount Rushmore. So
he is a George Washington.
Oh, boy.
Anyway.
Insert argument here over what George Washington means.
I know.
And what Abe Lincoln means and which one's which.
Right.
But yeah. So I think what I'm hearing is iconic is largely your hit against it. Like, it's iconic, but it doesn't quite, like, in your mind, it's hard to top the Golden Retriever or whatever.
And again, also, it's at this time in my life. If you would have asked me a long time ago, I would have agreed I would probably have put it in my first, no negotiable or something.
And Rottweiler was the other one you were saying?
Yeah, so the Rottweiler, for example, it's a very popular dog, but he will never be as popular as a Beagle.
Or German Shepherd.
Yes, or German Shepherd.
Which is sort of the same category,
Right.
too.
I
I
mean,
kind of
what
hate putting them in the same category because Rottweilers have a more negative... That's another thing against Rottweilers. I think they have a very negative connotation. German Shepherds
Yeah,
are
I was
still
thinking,
overwhelmingly positive.
what would they need to do to be in the Mount Rushmore? I say, stop eating kids.
Eating kids. Heard first here. Sound the alarm. Rottweilers eat children. Collie. Collie was top 10 from the 1900s to the 1970s, every single decade except for the 1930s. So that's another one. Represents a lot of the sort of olden days, right? And they're probably the most popular of the herding dogs. Top 5 3 times. Pretty impressive. Number 1 in the 1900s. And when I say 1900s, I mean the decade of 1900 to 1909.
09.
Well, through 1909 until...
Yeah, until the end.
1910. I was conflicted with putting that in there because it's to me seemed to even more represent the olden.
It has presence.
Because Beagle represents everything.
Yeah.
And then Poodle's sort of that middle ground, but leaning towards older, right? Because it was number 1 in the 50s and 60s. But Collie really represents the early 1900s, which I thought was a powerful thing for it. But it's dropped off so much. It has not been in the top 10 since the 70s. So that's 50 years now that it's not been in the top 10. In this case, it's sort of the opposite of the Golden Retriever, where like Golden Retriever is clearly in the Mount Rushmore of the last 30, 40 years, but clearly not even close to the Mount Rushmore before then. The Collie's the inverse of that.
Okay.
It clearly would deserve it if we were talking 70s and earlier, but we have to include present day as well. It's clearly not there. It hasn't even been in the top 10.
Like from
Lassie
I
is an iconic
I didn't know
Collie
that
for
he was
sure.
actually called the Collie for many years. We always call it the Lassie.
So what it would need from me, it would need to slip back into the top 10 for modern day.
Okay.
In order to make it into the Mount Rushmore, probably replacing the Poodle, it would need more representation from today. So, for example, if in the next 20 years it cracked the top 5, 2 of the next couple decades, that's when I'd start to be like, okay. Also, shout out to Corgi lovers. If you're a Corgi lover, drop a like.
Corgi.
People of the internet. Because now I'm going to tell you that I didn't even entertain the idea of a Corgi. I just looked up the stat just to get you off my back.
Corgi.
It
That's
has
the one, the
never.
meme one.
Yes. I know you internet culture is obsessed with Corgis. You're probably upset with me right now. It's never been in the top 10. You're wrong. If you think it's on the Mount Rushmore, you are objectively wrong. It's never been on the top 10. Even this past year, still not on the top 10, much less a whole decade's top 10. Just because it's popular on the internet for whatever reason doesn't make it deserve this place. I just want to brush over that before talking about the actual contenders here. The Dachshund. It has been top 10 since the 40s, which shocked me. I never would have guessed that. The thing it needs for me is to get number 1 at least once. It has never been number 1. And something common to all of the ones that made my Mount Rushmore is they all were number 1 for at least one decade. Also, people to be able to say their name. Half the time when I see it, I still think Dash Hound, and that's
how I want to
not what it
pronounce
is. That's
But
how
I
I
know
want
that
to
it's
pronounce
not,
it.
and then it ends up sounding just like a weird word.
Boston Terrier. Top 10, 1900s to 1950s.
Boston
Number
Terrier.
1 twice. One of the 3 to do it twice. One of 4 to do it twice or more. Number 2 twice, which is also impressive. Number 3 and number 9. But again, it needs to come back in the top 10 for a few decades because it has not been top 10 since the 50s, which is a long, long time. Bulldog, top 10 in the 1900s to 30s, top 10 again in the 2000s, 2010s, but it never was like top 5 or number 1. It is very iconic though, which iconic is really the only reason I even have it on my snubs, is I know there are people out there that for whatever reason are wrong and think that they're cute because I'm sorry. Let me get on my soapbox for a second. This is another episode of Joseph's Soapbox.
Here we go.
Which will be a new feature that I'm just making up stuff. Here's the thing. Gotta be honest with you. I'm always honest with you. Much to your chagrin, probably. And the reality is that it is asinine to believe that something is so ugly, it's cute. Let me explain what's really going on here. You look at that ugly creature that is ugly, and you think, wow, that's so ugly that I feel bad for. Everybody else who is sane looks at this dog and struggles because they think, oh, it's just not cute. So you feel pity for the dog. That pity manifests itself in love. Maybe because you yourself have self-esteem issues. If that's true, I'm very sorry. Maybe you should be looking for help for yourself because you're objectively wrong that an ugly dog is so ugly that it's cute. That's not a thing, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a thing. The dog is fine.
Doesn't care if he's cute or not. It's a dog.
Dog doesn't know. Dog does not have self-esteem issues. You know how I know that? Because I've watched dogs lick their own butts in front of me. Do they look slightly sheepish when they're taking a crap in the backyard? Yes. My argument? They're not embarrassed that they're taking a crap in front of me. They're embarrassed that they know I'm the one who has to clean it up. Cocker Spaniel is my last snub. Top 10 every decade but the 2000s and the 2010s, which shocked me because I have really loved my interaction with Cocker Spaniels, but I was never under the impression that they were that popular to be top 10 every decade except for 2000s, 2010s.
Well, you have the Lady and the Tramp.
That's true.
Was a very popular and still is a very popular.
I did not think of that. I don't think it was ever top 5. I probably would have put it down. Could be wrong. It definitely was never number 1. So it's actually pretty high on my snubs list, sort of surprisingly. Like, it deserves a place more than the Bulldog. Just going by popularity stats, I felt the iconicness, it still doesn't have a place. And I certainly don't feel too bad about not putting it in there because, I don't know. It's something about the iconicness, not quite there. But for all you Cocker Spaniel lovers out there, there you go. I mentioned it in my snubs and gave it the respect it deserves. It is a very nice dog. Yeah. I have only positive things to say about my interactions with them, for sure. And if you have only positive things to say about your interaction with us via hitting the like button.
That's how we know.
Be sure to hit that like button so we know that you enjoy these videos. Drop a comment below. Let us know what you think the biggest snub was. Subscribe. Hit that little notification bell so you know when the next video comes out. And whether you do that or not, I hope you know, and Carlo hopes you know, that we appreciate all of your support, even if it is just via watching this video. If this is the first video you watched and you didn't even listen to us and go back and watch the actual Mount Rushmore of dog breeds, that's okay. We still appreciate you watching this video, making it this far in the video. We will talk to you next time.
My next dog might be a pig.
That's not a dog. So what you're saying is we're not going to hang out anymore because you're old.
Well, I don't know.
You'll be old.
I don't know if you'll make it anyways.
Wow. You don't know if I'll make it. You're the older one.
That doesn't have anything to do with it.
I mean, statistically it does.